Hey tankers, and welcome back to World of Tanks with PR154, eh? I'll park that. Hey tankers, and here today we are following AusCanPlant of the Solid clan in the premium Tier 6 American tank destroyer, the T78. Now broadly speaking, this vehicle is a little bit of a halfway house between Hellcat and Jackson. Most of its characteristics roughly fit halfway between, except for a few that we'll get into a little bit later. AusCanPlant, unfortunately, has left the server region. He's actually moved back to Canada. So he's been a very dedicated follower of the channel. Has been with us pretty well from the day we started. So it's been a real pleasure to showcase him on the channel here today. And AusCanPlant has a job to do here, specifically TD-14, the Big Hunt, and that's the penultimate mission to pick up the T28 heavy tank concept. That's the second long-awaited backup campaign. Now, in order to knock over the primary condition, he's got to account for at least 15% of the total damage caused by his team. He also needs to win a battle, and for the honours condition, he has to survive the battle. And he's picked a decent weapon to do this with. This is the T78. Has, I guess, a mix of the characteristics of M18 and M18 Hellcat and Jackson. So what do you like about the Jackson? Well, the Jackson's got a lot more armor than Hellcat. It's got like a 75mm turret facing, and then in front of the turret facing, you've got another 75 odd millimeters of gun mantlet. So that's anything trying to shoot you through the face with less than 150 millimeters of penetration is going to come up wanting. The body armor a little bit better than Hellcat, but not appreciably. I certainly wouldn't rely on the hull armor of T78, nor would I Jackson for that matter. I would suggest. The gunnery, it still fires the same 90mm standard AP round that hits for 240 hit points and penetrates for 160mm. There is a slight difference, however. Both Jackson and the Hellcat will penetrate for 243mm with their premium APCR, whereas T78 comes in a little bit shorter here at 221mm. But still, that's an appreciable amount of punch for Tier 6, regardless. Now, this position has become a little bit untenable here for AusCanPlant. We've got the A20 Russian light tank has pushed in and has come in below this spotting position, such that everyone here is now proximity spotted. So it's not really tenable for them to hold it, because if they hold it, they're just going to be vulnerable to incoming fire from this quarter, and anything that's left over here, like anything in draw range, is going to light them and snipe them. So AusCanPlant is pulling away. Mobility characteristics of this vehicle, Jackson is a little bit more, quite a lot more sluggish than Hellcat. T78 is a little bit more agile than Jackson, but it's certainly not as fast as Hellcat. Although curiously, the reverse speed on T78 of 14 kilometers per hour is actually a lot faster than either Jackson or Hellcat, which is a little bit of an oddity, and actually quite a handy characteristic for a tank destroyer if you're trying to fire and then duck back into cover. One of the big drawbacks of M18 Hellcat is the gun dispersion. Specifically the dynamic dispersion. You get like 0.36 meters per 100 meters of additional effect if you're moving the turret or moving the hull or moving across the map, and that can be quite prohibitive. Fortunately, you've got a 1.6 second aim time to offset that in Hellcat. Jackson, on the other hand, is a much more stable gun platform. Which its dispersion factors are closer to sort of 0.24 dynamic dispersion factors again. Now both those guns have 0.34 meters per 100 meters of dispersion once they're fully dialed in. And it doesn't take that long to do that, actually, because they have a 1.6 second aim time. So the gun on T78, well, its dynamic dispersion factors sit as a bit of a halfway house between Jackson and M18 Hellcat, but it does disperse a little wider. You get 0.36 meters per 100 meters with this vehicle. So its long-range spotting credentials aren't quite as good, and it does have a slightly longer aim time at 1.9 seconds. But still, I generally regard anything under 2 seconds as pretty good anyway. So let's not look the gift horse in the mouth. That's just more of a comparative note. But certainly, given your aim time, given your base dispersion, given the residual dispersion, it's something that does need to be managed. But AusCanPlant taking his second kill of the game with a fairly measured and patient shot there. Now, having dug that A20 out, that should suggest that that this position is now safe for them to reoccupy and start to, I guess, reoccupy that solid tank destroyer position. But in the meantime, just taking a few pot shots at the bush areas. He has been spotted. Not quite sure where that was from, but it may well have been from the Stridsvagn M4257, which has now taken up the position that had been previously occupied by the A20. So that could potentially be a bit of a problem for them. It certainly doesn't make retaking that position a very attractive prospect for AusCanPlant here. So. The friendly team, however, they have managed to push through the 1 to 5 lines, push through these bombed out factories, and exert a bit of map control that way. So this potentially leaves opportunity for this rather dynamic tank destroyer to come in and start to come in at a different angle, get a new firing angle on the enemy, one that they're not really expecting. And that's one of those things that these turreted tank destroyers can be quite good at doing. It's almost like a harder hitting medium tank whose turret is, well, driven by a hand crank rather than a hydraulic pump. But once you're across that, once you're over it, it's generally not a problem. Now, pushing forward with the rest of the team is probably not going to be something that's going to hurt AusCanPlant here, because you've got the Sturmgeschütz 3G and the T67 that are both taking care of business on the cap circle. They did have a Lichfeld Haubitz 18B2 up until about 30 seconds ago. The Stridsvagn M4257 in the mid has been checked by the Jagdpanzer IV, but unfortunately they just both destroyed each other in near simultaneous beauty. But that still leaves M10 RBFM in the middle that's able to get a bit of flanking fire into this area. Now, it's probably not terribly wise here for AusCanPlant to get into a shot-for-shot trade with M10 RBFM, mostly because M10 RBFM it's going to have better dynamic gun handling characteristics. It's going to have higher rate of fire, so it will get those more precise shots in, and it will be able to follow up a lot more effectively. Now, while they have a modest numerical advantage, have a look at where these numbers are. You've got the BDR G1B up there on their own, and less than a quarter of their hit points. I'd say 20% of their hit points left. So rushing in to support that, it's probably sending good money after bad. If we want to sort of equate hit points to dollars, we can see that the balance of the tank destroyer force is still planted in this K1 position, which I guess was really handy when the enemy was potentially charging through the 8-0 lines and then starting to contest the cap, but possibly not moving forward when they needed to do. And I guess that's something that you have to be super conscious of with tank destroyer gameplay is knowing, okay, when are you playing defensively and when are you pushing up in support of the team? Slower tank destroyers really suffer from it as well, because when it comes to supporting the team, they need to make those movements a hell of a lot earlier, because they generally have a longer travel time to get into their next support position, depending on where the team is. And of course they carry the risk that it could all go to hell, and then all of a sudden they're out of position when the enemy wins the second front and starts to push back in. So that's of course something that needs to be managed as well. But for now, with a lot of enemy vehicles cleared off the board, he's been able to take the defensive position. And the enemy, I guess they had the classes such that it was incumbent on them to push forward. He's been able to see the KV-1 and pushing back behind the foliage here. He's been able to engage that KV-2 and start causing damage to it without being spotted in turn. And he knows he's right to do that because the bush has gone completely opaque in front of him, is offering maximum coverage. Now he's rolling forward occasionally to reacquire the target, but otherwise is able to put shots into this KV-1 with relative impunity. Still not quite sure where this M10 RBFM is, but certainly this has improved the team's prospect. Oh, there's the M10 RBFM. So it's moving up through the coalfields. But probably priority here is to knock this KV-1 out of the game, given that it is a one-shot. He's got 240 hit points per shot here on the T78. Moving forward, needs to reacquire, but the M10 RBFM is there, so let's take the shot at that, and that's taken away over half the hit points of M10 RBFM. So yeah, in spite of exposing to the KV-1, a good decision to sort of make hay while the sun was shining. This should be the kill shot M10 RBFM, and AusCanPlant takes their 5th kill of the game. This just leaves the one Hellcat in a 3v1 situation. Now surprisingly, despite having the edge, it's only just now that one of these tier 5 tank destroyers in the back of the map has decided to start moving. I'm not sure if that goes to their experience or not, but yeah, it's certainly something as a tank destroyer player that you eventually need to learn to manage. There's a time for camping and there's a time for supporting the team, and if you don't push up early enough, you can be found really not supporting your team very well. If you push up too early, well, you can find yourself out of position, and if you push up too late, well then you can find yourself having a pretty boring game, just driving past the charred corpses left by your teammates. Now it's just the Hellcat left. AusCanPlant has been able to identify it. 500 hit points left in the tank. Unfortunately, a swing and a miss on the initial shot, but well, your vehicle is its own weapon. Going for the ram. Now at 124 hit points left, the Hellcat is one-shottable to T78. This is a massive advantage for AusCanPlant, and is able to take the kill, and is 6th for the game. So very nicely done there. So he's got the win. He's survived the battle. Let's take a look at the results and see if he got this damage score. So we can say with a bit of certainty here that AusCanPlant has picked up his other primary mission condition here, which was to account for at least 15% of the enemy hit point pool, because he has picked up the high caliber medal, which is only awarded if you account for at least 20% of the total enemy hit point pool. He's also picked up the Top Gun medal for accounting for at least 6 enemy kills. He's picked up the Bruiser medal as well, accounting for enemy vehicle modules or damaged crew members at least 5 times in the course of the battle, and he's also picked up the Fire for Effect medal, which is very rare to get this without getting this. For his efforts overall, a level 1 mastery badge. I mean, all things considered, he actually did quite well. Over 2,300 hit points of damage inflicted on the enemy. But I guess a lot of those enemies that he was causing damage to and killing were a tier below, and that's going to affect the algorithm of how much experience points that they get, and it's the experience points that feed your mastery level. Having a look at the team scores, however, he has placed top by experience by quite a significant margin, about 30% over the next vehicle, which was the BDR G1, who had quite a cracking game there, accounting for a lot of kills, a lot of damage. A special mention as well to T77, although they played a fairly static game in the back corner. They've obviously played to their role and had some impact on the battle throughout. Unfortunately, the Sturmgeschütz 3 that was also in the back corner, not so much. Having a look at the enemy team, special mention to their M18 Hellcat, who picked up quite a good damage score, as well as the M36 Jackson. So these two tech tree American tank destroyers were running a few comparisons on throughout the course of the commentary. Having a look at the detailed report, quite a profitable game here for AusCanPlant, and that's in spite of running a standard account. There was some credit boosters running here that we can see, but in spite of that, I mean, he wasn't really firing a hell of a lot of premium ammunition, and arguably didn't really need to that fight. So taking the booster out of the equation, that's still a profit of about 33,000 credits, which is not too bad at all for tier 6. So very well done there to AusCanPlant of the Solid Clan. I certainly hope you won't be a stranger. You will be missed around the ANZ server. And if any of the rest of you have a replay that you'd like to see featured on the channels, then please reach out over Discord or any of the links below. We'll do our best to sort you out. In the meantime, take care out there.